moving to a land of the unknown. It's the land of the unknown because you just don't know what happens. Like, it can never be how it worked out for someone else that it would work out for you. If you feel like you want to move, that's okay. But if you feel like you're not really getting that, there's something in you that just tells you this moving thing is not for you, just stay where you are and give it time. Maybe with time, your ideas and everything will change. So today we're going to be, basically chatting and discussing a topic that has reoccurred a whole lot of times since I moved from Nigeria to Canada. And I just felt, I always try as much as possible to reason from the angle of the other person, right? Because I understand that a lot of people may be wondering what it's like relocating, leaving your work and leaving your work, leaving your family, leaving your business behind, and then moving to a land of the unknown. It's the land of the unknown because you just don't know what happens. Like, it can never be how it worked out for someone else that it would work out for you. So, and because I've had this question come up like so many times, so many people have DM'd me to ask me, some people have even sent, reached out to me in one way or the other to ask me what it was like relocating from Nigeria to Canada. And in this case, I'm going to be talking about my experience, but at the same time, sharing what I have to say as though, or imagining that people, or you're relocating to any country, right? So it doesn't really matter if it's just Canada or if you're going to any other country, UK, the US, wherever you decide to go to. Before I start, I want to put a disclaimer out there. I am not an immigration consultant. I am not an immigration officer. I do not work with the Immigration of Canada or IRCC of Canada. Is there anything like IRCC of Canada? I do not work with IRCC, and I'm not affiliated with the Canada government in any way. I am only here to share my own experience regarding relocating, what it's been like for me, my regrets, if any, my story. Yeah, basically just wanting to share these things so that people who are trying to make a decision can hear from me, and also, have like another view that they can, be able to relate to, or be able to, add to the information they already have so that they can make a better and more informed decision. The first thing I want to talk about is what led me, like, if you're not a business person, or if you don't run a business, you may never really understand the dilemma, the difficulty associated with making up your mind to relocate from a particular country. I'm not just talking about relocating from a particular country. I'm talking about relocating from a particular country where you have worked so hard to build your brand over the years. One of the most difficult decisions I've ever taken as a human being, right? One of the most difficult decisions I've ever taken as a human being, no cap. Because I was so confused. I'm like, what is on the other side? You can't even know. You can never imagine what lies on the other side. Do you understand? Like, you can never imagine. And remember what I always say, the experience with one person can never be the same as another person's experience. It could be similar, but everyone's experience is always different. So for me, it was even worse because at least other people will have their friends or people who are in the labor market, or people who have like all these corporate jobs, to ask questions, right? It's only normal that you have more people who have relocated, that are doing like the normal government job or all these normal corporate jobs, right? It's not common to see people who have relocated and are running a business. I didn't have anybody to ask questions. I didn't have anybody to ask questions business-wise. I had like, when it came to makeup, yeah, I had like maybe 1 or 2 persons that I was able to pretty ink, right? But it wasn't enough information. You get what I mean? Like, one person's experience is not enough, as opposed to, I went on YouTube, oh my goodness. Which for me was part of the reason why I felt I needed to do this video. If I struggled with getting information, other people who are like me shouldn't struggle, because now I'm here, right? I can share my experience and people can learn from it. So I didn't really have like enough people to, you know, get information from, which was what made it so difficult. It was so difficult because it's always easier when you have like somebody who has gone ahead of you and you're talking to them, or you're conversing with them and they're giving you all this information, as opposed to when you're trying to imagine what it's like when you have to figure everything out yourself, right? Because everyone's industry is not the same. You may know photographers, you may know, but knowing people who do what you do or what you intend to do is actually where the real thing is, right? A lot of people have asked me, Ginika, why did you leave? You were doing well in Nigeria. Why did you leave? Like, what led to that? And I felt if I don't talk about this, like, this topic will not be complete. Now, before I even talk about it, one thing I want to say is that it's highly important that when it comes to this relocation of a thing, we understand and respect people's opinions, right? I mean, I'm saying this because I've seen a lot of videos on Instagram, on social media, where people, you know, say, I've seen where somebody said, oh, that she can never relocate. And then people in the comment section were bashing her that, oh, you don't know what you're saying, da 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 da. I don't think relocation is for everyone. You get what I mean? There are people who, no matter what happens, no matter how bad things get, they'll tell you they will never relocate. And that's okay. I mean, I just don't understand why, you know, it has to be so difficult for us to understand and respect people's views on their own life decisions. Anyway, back to my gist. So back to what led me to that point where I'm like, you know what is even this relocation thing they're talking about? When something is meant to happen, God puts you in certain uncomfortable situations, right? Where you get to that point where you feel like, okay, I have like that, this is the only option I have left. You get what I mean? So I was in that place, always very open to allowing myself to understand what like right now, what is God saying to me? You know what I mean? For me, that's always like the goal in every situation, to understand and ask myself, what is God's message for me in this season of my life? Do you understand? Sometimes the message may not even be clear. Sometimes you feel like you don't even know, but all you need to do is just to obey. It's just to obey. I got to that point where the usual Lagos traffic, that was like a thing that a lot of people are so used to, became a nightmare for me. The usual things of having your generator spoil and you're sad and your business is slow because of all this stress that comes from all these things that I could on a normal day deal with, all of a sudden became something that I couldn't even understand why I was so upset about these things. Coupled with the fact that in 2019, I started having this very intense migraine. I don't know if it's migraine. I don't know what that thing is called, but it was like this kind of headache that would not go away. It was so bad. It was so bad. I would sleep with this headache. I'll wake up with this headache. Luckily for me, my one of my sisters is in the medical line, so she was able to get me an appointment in 2020 during COVID. You know, I had this consultation with a consultant, all those people who had stuff to do with all this head related stuff, and you know, I started taking some drugs to see if it could help. The drugs sometimes would work, sometimes they would not work. Looking back now, I feel like all of those things were what God needed to happen to me to put me in that mindset where I'll be fine with the idea of relocating. Before then, if you tell me relocation, I'm like, Why am I relocating? I'm like, do you understand what I mean? Like, I'm okay where I am. Do you understand? Like, you know, to God's glory, like I was comfortable, you know. So these things started happening. I remember how all of a sudden, I knew that I wasn't always like okay with the whole Lagos traffic and everything, but it got to a point where I was so upset. I started hating going to the studio. I started hating my job. I would look for any excuse not to be in the studio, because I was trying to understand, why will a 15 minutes drive turn out to be 2 hours, turn out to be 1 hour, depending on the day, depending on how lucky you are, depending on what happens in Lagos, which was more annoying because you don't have control over any of these things, right? So maybe people who grew up in Lagos may not really mind, because pretty much most of them are kind of like used to the whole thing. But for me, it got to a point where I was not coping. Ginika, no. You chose to do this thing because you like it, and also because you wanted to have control of your time and what you do and everything. And I felt like, you know, being in that circumstance was not allowing me to be that person, to live that life. You understand? So for me, that was like where the whole thing started. I started being uncomfortable. And then next thing, you know, all these little issues. Today you pay for then NEPA. Those who don't know what NEPA is like the power supply company in Nigeria. Back then, they've changed the name now to PACN. So now you pay for NEPA, and they will still come and cut your light, and then you're struggling. You're calling all these people to come and help you fix it. And then I remember one tall guy on our street. Then this guy was like the handy guy that people would just usually call to come and fix some of these things. And the guy would come, fix it. And then in some cases, he will fix it and do it in a way that it would still spoil again, because it was later when we changed, like when we stopped calling him, that the guy was not telling us what was going on, how the person who used to do it wasn't doing it well, just so that it would not last. It was all this. I'm like, why are human beings like this? Why do you have to be this mean just because you want to make more money? All these little bits and pieces. I'm just trying to tell you people what led me to that point where I was like, okay, since I don't have, like, to a very large extent, I don't have 100% control over these things happening. I want to always live a life where I'm intentional about my actions, where I'm in control of what happens to me to a large extent. Obviously, you can't be in control of everything, but I wanted to live that life where I'm able to, you know, influence certain things in my life. And the moment all of that was not happening, was not possible, I started becoming really uncomfortable. I started feeling like, okay, I'm open to this new idea of relocation. I don't know what lies there. And then coupled with the fact that when this whole thing started happening, all the signs were just dropping. It was almost like every day there's a new sign that God would drop that would lead you to know that he's calling you to be here. God started leaving bits and pieces, the crumbs and here and there, telling me that this is the new thing that he had for me. So the other thing I want to talk about is my experience so far. Read out. For me, one that I would never trade for anything. Everyone's journey, everyone's story is never ever the same. Everyone's chapter, everyone's journey, everyone's experience will never ever be the same. And the earlier you realize that your life is, God has planned your life to be in a certain way, the better for you. So my own personal experience so far has been good. And I can't even lie to you. At first, it was so scary. I remember days where I was asking God, is this what you brought me here for? Do you understand? Like, it was so, at first it was so confusing. Not even with regards to my work, because when it came to my makeup business, it didn't really feel like I moved. Like, I didn't need to struggle. By God's grace, I didn't need to struggle to get clients. You know, it was like it was smooth for me. A lot of people didn't even know that I've been here for just a really short time, because I know that when you're working in line with what God has called you to do, you can't be worried about these things. If God, see, let me tell you, there are people that their own destiny is that when they move, whatever business they were doing where they live. It doesn't have to be Nigeria, it could be Ghana, it could be the US, it could be anywhere you were living before you decided to make that move. Whatever it is you were doing then was just for the season. It was just for that season of your life. For some people, when they move, they just do one certification and then their life just skyrockets. Some people, when they move, things just start becoming more difficult. They start, not like difficult in terms of like survival and all of that, but generally like you're not happy, things are not turning out the way you had hoped in so many other aspects. So it's just all different. That's why it's so important that I can't stop saying it. When you want to make a life decision, ask God for the signs. Ask God for the signs. Ask God for the signs. I can't stop saying this. Ask God, God, give me a sign. Tell me if this is what you want me to do. Tell me if this is what you want me to do. It's so important. The experience has been good for me. It hasn't been bad at all. I won't trade it for anything, you know. And I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful to God. Do I have any regrets? I'll be honest with you. I have no regrets whatsoever. I have no regrets whatsoever. All the things I feared didn't turn out the way I thought they would. I have no regrets whatsoever. I'm not in the position to advise anyone, but I don't think this video will be complete without leaving an advice. Like I already said, if you want to relocate, that's good. If you want to stay back in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Namibia, in wherever you are, in the US, in UK, wherever you are, and you were initially thinking about moving, right? Wherever you are and you feel like maybe you're okay where you are, if you feel like you don't need to, don't follow the pressure of Japa, you know, if you feel like you want to move, that's okay. But if you feel like you're not really getting that, there's something in you that just tells you this moving thing is not for you, just stay where you are and give it time. Maybe with time, your ideas and everything will change. I know someone who has gone to any length to move, to relocate. And the more he tried, was the more he failed. While I know people who didn't even do anything, and it was almost like they didn't even do anything and then everything just clicked, you know. So just like understand that this is a personal race. There is no because that person did, let me do. You may just, you know, get in the whole mood and everything, but what I'm just trying to say in summary is that you need to pause and pray about it. Like, pray about it, talk to God. For those of you who believe in God, talk to God. If you don't believe in God, just, you know, find a place where you are at peace with the whole idea before you start. It's so important. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of living in Canada. I'm not going to speak for every part of the world, right? I'm just going to talk about Canada because that's where I live. The first pro on my list is the healthcare. Ooh, I can't even tell you, like, if you have been sick in Nigeria or your loved one has been sick and you experience, or in Nigeria or anywhere, right? And you experience, you know, things that could have been done better, things that could be easily done better, and you eventually move to another country. Trust me when I tell you, if the country has a better healthcare, you would definitely not even act like you didn't notice the difference. Do you understand? So that for me is a major plus, because what else? We can't predict what happens in this life. You know, we can't predict a lot of things. So, like, we don't have a say over, oh, I'm never going to be sick, or my loved one is never going to be sick. Those are like the basic things that come with living in this life, right? If you're living in this life, you have to always be open to understanding that these are the things that you may not be able to do anything about it, right? So yeah, that's part of life. So healthcare for me is a major. I can't even lie, is a major. You know, knowing that you have this access to good healthcare and everything in between is a major for me. The next thing for me that is a major is the power supply. Oh my God. Like, every time I traveled out of Nigeria and I ever saw, and like maybe when I needed to go back to Nigeria, and I ever saw how power supply was like a norm in other countries. Sadly, it's not a norm, at least as of now, you know, in Nigeria. I want to believe that years to come, this video will be, you know, like there will be like something better to say about the power supply, you know, in Nigeria. It affected me more because of the fact that I was running a business. If you're running a business in Nigeria, you cannot pretend to not notice when there is proper power supply in another place where you're also running a business. I remember the days when you know you will have clients and then all of a sudden, no, you did not even do anything. You did not even stress. This is gen you just used. Sometimes you just use the gen in the morning and then you have an afternoon client and the gen decides not to come on. And then you now want to call all those sharp handymen to come and help out. Sometimes they'll tell you they are coming and they don't show up. Like, so you can't even pretend like you don't notice when it's different. You get what I mean? The other thing for me with Canada is the ease to become a citizen, right? You know, without any crime records, without any issues, you know, within 3 years plus, you should be qualified and eligible, depending on the routes with which you came in. I don't know if it differs, but within 3 years thereabouts, you should be qualified to apply for citizenship, right? Which for me, for a country that is rated number 4 in the world of where to live. The other thing I wanted to talk about was employment. For people who, you know, want to work, want to get a job. So far you come in here with a good degree, like you're not I don't know about people who were not educated or who are not educated, but I know that if you're educated, you should have access to good, you know, employment. You know, it may not be the same for everyone, but on the average, most people get a good job that is paying fair enough, and then with time they can gain some other, you know, experiences that can help them get even way higher jobs. Then the other thing I want to talk about is the law. You know, knowing that people can't just do stuff and just get away with it. That's like a major for me. I know the times when certain things happened and I couldn't do anything. I'll never forget the day one keke man, keke is like the tricycle in Nigeria, where one tricycle guy hit me, you know, from my back, like my back bumper, if that's what it's called. And the guy just came down and was raking at me. My husband was not there with me, so it wasn't me. I was even more focused on, let me just be going home, because we're in traffic, and I was like, okay, I don't want to come down and be arguing with this guy in traffic. You know how crime and your stuff could get stolen, you could get hurt. I was just like, it wasn't even worth it coming down to argue with this guy. You get what I mean? So my point is that just knowing that there is law kind of like helps people to behave better, and knowing that, okay, if you break traffic lights, the camera will capture what you did and then send you bill to your house, you know, or all those kind of things. In extreme cases, the police could get involved. Just knowing that these basic things are there to, like, you know, help people behave better, it's really a major, you know, it just makes people to just generally just have it at the back of their mind that you don't just do things and just get away with it, right? There are like a lot of opportunities, you understand. There are people who come here, for example, you can relocate as an accountant, and then you find yourself being able to fit into other industries. Kind of like in some cases, you're not restricted to a particular thing simply because that's what you did before, or that's what you study. For me, that's a good one, because people can now, you know, make better decisions. You know, I know people who have relocated and started studying to join the health sector, and you know, these are like things that are made possible because of the way the system is structured. Then also the volume of the people who are poor, poverty is low, right? The volume of the people who are poor is to an extent limited or very low. That's simply because the way the structure is, it allows people to be able to be entitled to certain benefits from the government if you're eligible, and those kind of benefits all help people who are struggling, and then they can have like a steady life, knowing that every month the government can help you with this. Not everybody is qualified for that, but there are people who are struggling and they are qualified for all those government benefits. You don't even necessarily need to be struggling. If you're like the middle class or the low class, you are supposed to be eligible for some of those benefits. And also, like, people who are really broke, people who can't afford food, there's like what they call food bank, where people can go and get free food. Like, you get bags of different food items, and then at least they use that to sustain themselves instead of going hungry. Okay, then the crime rate is low crime rate. Like, it's really low. Some people go out, they don't even lock their door. I'm not saying, oh, that's okay, but I'm just saying, like, obviously there's crime, but it's on the low. It's not as common, and people don't exactly live in so much fear, all because of these things. For me, I don't know if this applies to everybody, but for me, there's less distraction. There's always a thing when you are not living in a place where you grew up, in a place where you have like a lot of people, like, who are like directly or indirectly in your affairs. You get what I mean? No matter how you want to look at it, there are people who will always be in your affairs. They will always be in your business. Okay, right? And you don't exactly want to, even when you don't exactly want to always push them away, but here there's less distraction. You have less excuse or less reason to say you're not doing what you want to do. Like I said, this doesn't apply to everybody, right? So yeah, now how can we talk about the pros and we don't talk about the cons? The number one con for living in Canada is the cold. It's really cold. For someone like me, I don't mind. So far, there are things we can do where the house is warm, so the heater is always on in winter. But generally, so far, there are things we can wear to give us a little bit of warmth. I don't mind. It would have been a bad thing if there was nothing to do. Obviously, sometimes it's annoying, you get into the car even with the heater on. Sometimes it feels a little bit uncomfortable before you now adjust, but apart from that, the cold can be something that a lot of people don't like. Like this week that I'm filming this video, we have minus 32. The easiest way to imagine a minus 32 is, if you like, the typical weather in a place like Abuja or Lagos in Nigeria is like maybe between 26 to 32, 36, depending on the period of the year. So imagine when the weather is 30 degrees, and imagine how hot it feels, how the weather, like, you open up the windows, the AC is always on. Then imagine when that 30 degrees goes down to 29, 28, 27, 26, it's getting colder, right? It's getting cooler. 25, 24, all the way down to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 degree. Then imagine when that number starts to go to minus. Now it's in the freezing side, right? Remember that most of the time in winter, there's always snow. Even if it's not snowing, there's still snow on the ground, which generally just makes everywhere to feel cold. Then imagine when the weather is still with that snow you already have. Just imagine living in the freezer. You get what I mean? Then just imagine when that number keeps dropping to minus, all the way to minus 32. You can only experience this thing to understand it. You can never, it's really cold. But the good thing is that, if you're coming to a place like Canada, you can decide, depending on the means you're coming, if you have the opportunity to pick where you want to go, you can choose the places that have less cold. I know that Winnipeg, Manitoba is very cold. I live in Calgary and it's extremely cold. I know that Regina is one of the coldest. So you may just want to, if you have the opportunity to avoid the place like Regina and you're very concerned about the cold. But if you have other things that are attracting you to that place, you can just go and then you'll be fine. You'll get used to it. Yeah. So another thing that I have for con is the fact that you're far from family. This is a thing because, like me, I miss my sisters, I miss my parents, I miss my siblings, I miss my nieces and nephews. And sometimes this thing kind of like varies from one person to another. Some people miss their family members and it starts to turn into depression. Some people are very used to just doing stuff with family. Their family is already used to them, they're used to their family, they know how to flow with the family. So coming here, it's not the same. You get what I mean? Like, it's not the same knowing that you now have to be away from family. You know, some people don't know how to ask for help from people they barely just met or they've just known for a couple of years, while some people, they don't mind, they just move on like nothing happened. Yeah, so for me, being far from family can lead to depression for some people, while other people, it may not be such a big deal. Yes, number 3 point for me for the con is the fact that you have to put more effort to go to church. For those who want to be physically in the church, like myself, it's sometimes difficult, not easy, not as easy as it used to be, you know, back home, where the weather encourages or makes it easy for you to do these things. But sometimes you wake up, the cold, just all you want to do is just to sleep in. You don't want to go anywhere. You just want to sleep. So generally, life, not just even going to church, but generally you have to put more effort to do certain things. People who have to go to work in the snow, the kids have to go to work in the cold. The kids have to go to school in the cold. That's not really easy, especially for people who are newcomers. But with time, like I said, you get used to everything. Number 4 point for me is the fact that people are nonchalant. People don't care. You know, we come from a place where we actually do care for one another. It's like a norm. You know, in Nigeria, it's almost like a village raises a child. On the average, you know, your aunties are involved in your affairs, your uncles are, you know, even though these things may be changing now with the whole new generation effect and everything, but on the average, you find out that to an extent, I don't know if, obviously that has its own disadvantages as well, but the fact that you have people who can assist you with certain things, right? Here, you can live in a home for 5-10 years and you haven't spoken to your neighbor. It's that bad. And it's not, sometimes you may want to, but you may not be getting the same vibe from your neighbor. Some people are lucky, they have neighbors that are very welcoming, open, while a lot of other people have neighbors that they've never spoken to. The first place I lived when I came to Canada, I hadn't even with my eyes for once seen the people who live next door. For once, I didn't use my eye to see people who live next door. So you can imagine, for a whole year, I didn't see anybody going into that house, but someone lives there. I didn't see someone going into the other house, someone lives there. So you can imagine, and because of the way privacy is here, you can't just go and say you want to knock in their house. Christmas time, you know, in Nigeria, you may cook rice, do buns, do puff, all these things, and take to your neighbors. But here, don't go and knock on anybody's door when they did not invite you, you know. So there's all those kind of things, you know. It may be okay because eventually you adapt to everything, but in some cases you find out that it's not really good. You know, we all need each other to survive, but that's the norm here. If you're lucky and you live in any country and your neighbors are welcoming, trust me, it's a plus. Where I live now, I know my neighbors, they are more welcoming than the old ones. And I can't even say the old ones were not welcoming because it's not as if I went to do anything special, you know, today. I just had to mind my own business as well. Anyway, so back to the topic. The other thing that I have here is you have to put more effort to raising the kids. I had to put this one last so that I can express myself and use it to close out. This is so important. Like, especially when you're someone that you know you're family oriented, you're concerned about what your kids are doing. Because we're in a society where the norms or the values may not kind of like match the kind of values that we had in Nigeria, you know, or wherever it is you're coming from, you know. And it's more difficult because you teach something and then they go out there, they go to school, they mix with other kids who may have different values, different ideas. They've been taught different things by their own parents. So for me, it takes more work knowing that, let me say, for example, in Nigeria, you know that if, for example, you know that when we're like the general morals, to an extent, not totally, but to an extent, there's like general morals that the kids are used to. Like in Canada, there are some schools that don't allow you to pray. They don't allow you to talk about any kind of belief in the school, and these are schools that kids go to, you know, kids like that, not like they're adults. It's okay, they can make their own decision. And so, you know, if you're someone that all those kind of things matter to, it may be a thing that you may be worried about, and you may now need to put more effort, knowing that if your kids are home with you, you have to put more effort. And then when they go to school, or where they go to wherever they are going to, they may be hearing or learning different things. So for me, I don't really worry about that, because the way I live my life, I do what I have to do, put in all the effort I have to put in, and I go to sleep. I leave the rest for God, because I'm like, if God brought me here, I shouldn't be worried about how I'm going to survive, right? So yeah, that's just it. But generally, there's like way more effort to raise the kids in the right way, in the right direction. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that relationships tend to struggle for some people. Some people, you know, because the men or the women, for me, it's not really gender based, but most times men, like in most cases, have been used to being the ones who just go to work. Women also work, of course, but I'm just saying, like, on the average, the mentality of a typical traditional African person is that, okay, the man is just supposed to go to work, come back, chill, and then do his thing. Right? So knowing that you're in a place where all hands on deck, you're gonna wash plates, this one gonna cook, that one will be doing the laundry, this one will be taking care of the kids. So it's like sometimes some people are not easy. It's not even just the men. Sometimes women don't adapt easy, and the man is the one complaining. Sometimes the women adapt easy, but the man is the one who is not adapting. So if you're not careful, sometimes the relationship may get into that place where there's a lot of chaos and everything. So these are things that, if you bear in mind ahead of time, you kind of like might have this conversation with your spouse, and you people get to a place where you have an understanding and know what works, and everybody has to live up to their own expectations. So these are the things I took note. I hope that this topic has been interesting to you. You've, you know, listened and gotten one or two things from it. And if you made it to the end of this video, you are the real MVP. You are the real MVP. So with that, I come to the end of today's video. And if you enjoyed today's topic and you want us to have more chit chat like this on different kind of things, trust me, God has given me this gift to talk. So when I have to use it, I don't mind using it. So if you guys want to talk about stuff like this on this channel and you've enjoyed today's video, just drop it in the comments. I'm always in the comment looking out for what you guys have to say. And for all the people who have been commenting on my videos, I appreciate it. If you have been liking my video, I really, really appreciate it. I can't emphasize that enough. If you haven't subscribed to this channel at this point, I'm judging you. Yes, I'm judging you. Click it right now. Click the subscribe button, and I'll definitely see you guys by God's grace in my next video. I've enjoyed talking to you guys about this topic, and finally, I've gotten this off my chest. Maybe in the future we can do like an updated one, but for now I'll leave you with this, and I hope that it's been helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Bye.